why did you come to RMC? What prompted
Because I always intended to go in the regular army.
Ah,
I decided that when I was about 7. So RMC was always the goal down the road.
right. What was it like then?
Well, I don't know what it was like at any other time, but it was hell for us. Because I think the people ahead of us, they'd only had 1 year. And they hadn't, I don't know, mature isn't the word, I guess. But they really poured it on to try and make up for what they'd lacked in the previous, what should have been 3 years
Yes.
before they became seniors. In fact, they only had 1 year.
Yeah.
So they were rather difficult.
So it was difficult.
Let's see, we were the last class. We lived in the first year, we lived in the LaSalle building.
Yes.
It was the only building there apart from the new gym and the dining room.
Yes.
And the second year, we all lived in the frigate because we were down to 100 people. Our class was 100, the biggest class that's ever gone in up till then. 100, plus 4 drops. So we all lived in the frigate. We didn't have any horses, they were taken away in 1938, but we had motorcycles instead. And I can tell you a quick story on that one.
Yes,
The motorcycle corporal who was in charge of the motorcycles got us out for our first class, got us lined up on the motorcycles, told us how to start it. So we eventually got them all started, all a company at a time. So we got them all started. And then he tried to tell us how to stop them, because you couldn't hear them with the roar of the engines. So we got on and followed him out the gate and up the hill to Barryfield. And every time you hit a bump, your hands went down, and the thing took off. Most of them ended up in fences, farmers' fences, up on Barryfield Common, where they had a lot of sheep in those days. A few of us managed to get home, but most of them came back in the truck, in the back of a truck, with their motorbikes. It was a disaster. Anyway, that was the motorcycles. And then we had motorcycles classes every, I guess once or twice a week. One fellow one day went off the point at RMC, and he was reported missing at the Sunday lunch, or at the noonday lunch hour. We paraded 3 meals a day, paraded 3 times a day on the square to march over to the dining room. Reported to the duty officer he was missing, and the duty officer did nothing about it. And somebody found him lying there later in the afternoon. He'd gone over and hit his head on a rock, and he was finished for life. Didn't kill him, but... So that was the motorcycle bit. No horses. The college closed in 1942, as you know, to cadets, but they turned it into a staff college. They had officers coming back from England and from Canada in there as a staff college. There was a senior officers course in there as well, and an intelligence course, all run at the college, and they lived in Fort Frederick dormitory, and we were all in the frigate. We got into a bit of trouble because we used to watch these officers strolling across the square, and sloppy as hell, hands in their pockets. We used to yell out the windows of the frigate, take your hands out of your pockets, etc., etc. And of course, they'd been in England for 2 or 3 years, were a bit annoyed. Some young cadet telling him to do this. So we were all called up in front of the commandant in Curry Hall one day. But it was obvious from his conversation that he was with us 100%, he was really going through the motion.
Huh.
So, it was interesting. The college opened again in 1948, as you know. They had a large meeting in Curry Hall that I attended. I came down from Pennawall with a carload of us prior to opening it, because there was a great movement afoot to keep it closed and not reopen it. And I think the closing was led by General Fuchs, who didn't go there, and it had a bad time with RMC cadets, ex-cadets. And there was quite a movement to keep it shut. But Curry Hall was packed, standing room only, just jammed with ex-cadets, and demanding that it be opened immediately, sort of thing. And it was opened in 48, as you know. But the difference was that prior to the war, and my year ended, we paid our way, or our fathers did. We paid for everything, education, laundry, meals, uniforms, everything was paid for by your parents. And when they reopened it in '48, it had switched, and the cadets were paid to go there, and everything was on the house, so to speak.
Right.
And we got $5 a month. My father had to send $60 a year to $5 a month for $60 the first year, $10 a month the second year, and that was all you were allowed to have. So by the time you had bought your boot polish and Blanco and toothpaste and stuff like that, your $5 had dwindled to nothing. And if I got to the end of the month with enough money to take a girl to a picture show, which was about 25 cents each, and then across the road to the Scruff Shack, the Superior restaurant, where we went, if she had a small milkshake for 10 cents, and I had a small milkshake for 10 cents, you could just get by to the end of the month. I had $10 a month for the second year. The West Point hockey game, there were no West Point hockey games because the U.S. wasn't in the war. They came into the war at the end of '41, as you know. So in the spring of '42, we had our first West Point game. It was our turn to go down there. We had a marvelous time. They beat us for the first time ever. And it was a great, great weekend. You know, they provide the girls, and that was fine. Those that we didn't like, we switched when we went back to the Thayer Hotel, and the West Point cadets had to be in by 1 o'clock. We didn't, so we had a marvelous time. Oh yes, so we shared a room. We stayed with the cadets, and the drill was in those days that you stayed, when we were down there, we stayed with our opposite number from the West Point team in his room. He got the floor, you got the bed. When they came up here, it was vice versa.
Right.
So that was fine. The West Point weekend, the only games we played in those days were hockey, rifle and pistol, and then had a ball. You know, a formal ball.
Yes.
Afterwards. When we arrived, we all had to go and buy a book down in the canteen called a shit book. And it had all the information on RMC. What's on the arch, where Casey was buried, the old 18, the last 10 BSMs, and so on. All this good stuff, which you had to memorize and rattle off when anybody asked you, tell me the last 10 BSMs, and you'd rattle off their names. Or give me the old 18, you'd rattle them, and so on. And we used to parade most nights, nearly every night, after dinner, where there'd be a call out, parade under the clock, with whisks and shit books. And we would parade, and then life was hell until lights out, 10 o'clock. I mean, never got any work done, there's homework done in those days, because we were being run ragged by the senior class. And, you know, you'd go out, he'd say, if you didn't know something, go and run so many tracks for me, 10 tracks out on the stage.
Right.
Or whatever. There was a case where one cadet was sent out to run tracks, and wasn't told how many, and he ran all night. And when the cadet got up in the morning to shave, he looked out the window, and he saw this cadet running tracks. And he said, what's that nutcase doing out there? And then he remembered that he'd sent him out about 8 o'clock the night before, and he was still running, ran all night.
Well, there's
The entire year. It eased up a bit at Christmas, and eased up a bit at Easter, but basically it went on for the whole first year till the senior class left. If you got, or some senior was in a bad mood, he'd say, get your sweater, pullover, the turtleneck sweater, your RMC sweater, and your greatcoat, your fur hat, fur gloves, and your rifle, fall in downstairs, and you double over to the boiler room. The boiler room isn't there anymore. It's where the mess is now. But there used to be a boiler room which heated all the buildings at the college. And you go to the boiler room, which was hot as hell anyway, in all these greatcoats and everything, and you do push-ups with your rifle over your head, push-ups and bunny hops, and you name it till you nearly passed out.
Were there any controls on what the seniors could do to the juniors?
Not that I know of.
So the duty officer didn't pay any attention?
Oh, we never saw him.
Never saw him?
No.
Even though he might have been an ex-cadet and knew exactly what was going
they're probably ex-cadets. So the company commanders were captains or majors, ex-cadets, but they didn't come and stop anything.
So the stories of mistreatment which often come up about life before the Second World War are probably true.
I would think. The only place you were safe was if you could get out to the fort. And on a Saturday, we had classes on Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon we were watching sports because there were lots of sports going on. You know, we played against other places around. At any home game, everybody had to go to. You know, if you weren't playing, you were watching and cheering. You would BSM TV sort of thing. So you watched the sports all afternoon. But if there were no home games, then, and you weren't on a team that was playing a sport somewhere, you would try to get to the fort. Well, I will swear some senior used to be on duty watching out of the dormitory window. And he'd let you get about 10 paces from the gate to the fort, and then say, "Recruit here." You'd have to turn around and double back. But if you made it, you were home free once you got inside the fort. And then you could relax and do what you liked, and just stay out of the way for a while.
So that was the only break you got?
That's right. Yeah, well, Timmy O'Riordan was the senior one. And he became, they arrived as corporals from England, as PT instructors. And they soon became sergeants, and then they became, when we got there, they were CQS, Company Sergeant Majors or something like CSMI instructors or whatever the hell they were. Timmy was the senior one. Coggin was probably the better of the two. But they ran a certain amount of drill on the square, and the PT, of course. And they were around all the place. They were bloody good PT instructors. And they were very good at what they did. Just before we graduated, all the instructors that we had, sergeant majors on the square, the college sergeant major, Timmy became college sergeant major just before we left, promoted to lieutenant. But all the sergeant major instructors that we had were all promoted to lieutenant the day before we graduated. So they were one-day seniors with us.
Oh!
Which was rather clever, I guess. So anyway, they were the ones that ran the PT and things like that.
I see. Okay. So did you get to know them pretty well?
Oh yeah, they were with us all the time.
Right.
You know, they were on the square because we did drill every day on the square. They were in the gym with us doing gym every day. And boxing, we boxed in those days. And the horse, you know, the horse that you...
Yep, box horse.
Yeah, the box horse. And we did that, and we had sword swinging and club swinging and all these things. And they were with us all the time doing that. Well, it was, we did the physical work to put it up under the instruction of the senior class. And there were some pretty difficult things. You couldn't do them by yourself. You had to be helped. So what we did in my class when we ran it, we picked a few people who we sort of pushed over first to get them going. And then the rest pulled and pushed each other over. You couldn't leave one fellow behind an obstacle, because he'd never make it on his own. So somebody would be on the top of the obstacle, pulling him up. And they were all covered with grease and God knows what. There was one thing that was a maze, I guess. It was about, oh, not as high as that table, and you went up and down between the boards, covered over, and it was all the manure from the hen houses and stables of all the farms around the area. And then there was a water hole. We went over a fence, over a thing that was probably about 8 feet high. Over that, and you came down, you hit a ramp, and swish, in you went. And then there were two logs. You had to go over the first one, and then which was above the water a bit, and then under the second one. So you got 100% soaked, you know, doing it. It was filthy. I think every senior went out and did what he had to do the night before in it. It was a real mess. And it was that sort of thing. But they were all on the football field and around the fort.
Right.
But everybody had to get through every
And
obstacle.
how long would it have taken? Do you have any ideas?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose a couple of hours. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Right.
I know it was, you were bloody glad when you were finished. But
Because-
you're absolutely filthy when you're finished.
Right. And as I understand it, in that day, it was a race that actually had a declared winner.
Oh, yes. Yeah. They took the timing as everybody came in, they took the timing by companies, and then so they added up the time that the people in a company had taken, and then one company would be declared the winner.
Oh, I see. It wasn't so much an individual, it was a company?
I think it was, I can't remember whether we had an individual winner or whether it was just a company.
Wasn't checked by the senior staff either.
No. I'm
So-
sure it wasn't.
Right.
I'm damn sure the commandant didn't go along with it. Yeah,
Was it
we
the
were
same
considered
thing?
recruits after the obstacle race.
Right.
We were given lids off, as they called it. No, I
Yes.
don't know. Is that the same now?
There is. It's a term you should explain because
Well, lids off was when you weren't treated as a recruit. You were free to walk instead of run. You're free to do what you want, and the senior cadets wouldn't shout, you know, recruit here, if you got a lids off. Sometimes if you were playing on the football team, the football team had had a big win, the cadets playing on the football team, the recruits, would have a lids off. So it was possible for some to have it and some not.
Ah,
But after the obstacle race, we all got a lids off from about the time it ended, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever it was, until dinner time. And then after dinner, we were back to square one again.
the reprieve was short.
Very. See, they tried to jam as much as they could of the 4-year course into 2 years. So we started at 8 in the morning and went on till the 4, and then 4 we were out on the sports field. But we worked every Saturday morning as well. We did a lot of drill. We did a lot of military training at RMC. We had about, I would say, close to 20 subjects in military subjects, and about 20 academic subjects, which is a hell of a load.
Yes.
And the military subjects were things like foot drill, weapons training, artillery, engineering, field engineering, signals. We learned semaphore and all that stuff. And that type of stuff on the military side. And then we had on the academic side everything from mathematics to physics to you name it, everything, letter writing, you name it, 20 subjects roughly. And your report card, which you could find them in the registrar's office, are all there, and you can see all the subjects that we had.
Right. We should do that someday.
And I think that would be interesting because there were one hell of a lot. Now in our class, we only had 2 groups of people. Some people, you know, in the country have grade 13, others only go to grade 12 to get their junior matric. Well, you need a junior matriculation to get in, but some people got it with 13 years of school, and some got it with 12. So those that had 13 years did a slightly higher academic course than those that only had 12. Summer training, but there was no summer holiday in effect. I think we might have had 2 weeks leave at home with your parents during the summer. The rest of the time, we were doing military training. Now the gunners, for example, went off to Petawawa, and the armor went to their place at Borden. Signals went somewhere, engineers went somewhere else, and so on. And the training that we did at that time was like we would have to do when we left. They had an advanced training center, and when you finished at RMC, or you came into the Army from wherever, you went off and did this. The gunners had an 8-week course, and in the summer holidays, so-called, we did the first 4 weeks of that artillery advanced training. Armor did first 4 weeks of theirs. We joined a course going on with the other people from all across the country, and you did 4 weeks. They continued on and did the remaining 4 weeks. We had 2 weeks leave and then back at RMC. But the following summer, you had to do it 8 weeks anyway. You had to do it all over again. The whole 8 weeks.
Right.
So my father said, that's ridiculous. So he got me attached to a militia regiment, 7th Toronto Regiment, which was going to camp at Niagara-on-the-Lake. And I joined this regiment and spent my summer with the regiment, including their summer camp at Niagara-on-the-Lake. So I reckon I was ahead of most people because I made all the mistakes of dealing with soldiers, man management and stuff. And you make a lot of mistakes when you first start. I made all my mistakes, or not all of them, but a lot of them, that first summer.
Wow.
With the regiment. And I think I was rather better off because the following year I did the 8 weeks advanced artillery training and then joined a regiment. But I'd made a great many mistakes that first summer with the militia and therefore didn't quite make as many the following year when I joined my regiment, which was just about getting ready to go overseas.
Right.
Because I made sure, or my father did, made sure I got to a regiment that was going overseas and not going to be stuck here somewhere.
There was a lot of commentary about how backward, or I guess you could say out of date, the training was for the Canadian Army at the beginning of the war. Was that your experience, that what they were teaching was in fact out of date?
Yeah, it was World War I.
Right.
When we got to RMC, engineering, we dug trenches. And with a parapet and a parado, and they had to be measured. I think a parapet was 18 or 2.5 feet wide, and the parado behind you was a foot high, so it didn't shine. Your head wasn't sort of silhouetted out of the trench. And we learned how to do parados and parapets and fire steps and what have you in a trench. And we dug them in the engineering building, which was where the library, not the library, the sewing room is. You know that building just above the boathouse?
Yes.
Where the big window, it had big
Yeah.
windows in it. The gunners were on the floor, on level with the floor, with the big windows, and we looked out and we could aim our guns in the wintertime through these windows. The rest of the time we did it on the square. The engineers had these great rooms in the basement full of it was like a sawdust, but it was thicker than that because it stuck together like mud when you're digging in the earth. And we dug dugouts and trenches, World War I style, same measurements and everything. During the first term, I guess, we were there, up until about Christmas. And then after that, it suddenly changed, and all that went down the drain, and we started doing what you might call World War II stuff.
Yes.
We did bayonet drill, they had a thing called the Mad Minute, and they had sacks hung up to the height of a man. Some were on the ground, some were in trenches, some were doing something else. And you fixed your bayonet on your rifle, and you did this circuit, bayoneting every one as you went around, up or down, or wherever it was. The mad minute. Well, that sort of all phased out, and we started to get on to what you might call World War II tactics. But you're right, for the first, at least until Christmas, we were doing World War I stuff.
Now, when you got into second year, we don't have any first year. What was it like in the college when there was only you, your year?
Well, because we didn't know any difference.
Right?
I mean, we had a senior class in our first year. We were glad to see the end of them. And then we were there, but we had a rank structure. There was a BSM, you now call them a wing commander or something, and CSMs and sergeants and what have you down the line. And they kept the discipline going within the cadet battalion.
So there was...
But we didn't have anybody to chase around the way we had been chased. No, pressing trousers was done in your bed at night.
Yes.
You know, you put them under your sheet, you soak the creases with a wet sponge, put your sheet over the top of them, and you slept on 2 pairs of trousers, yours and the seniors. And hope to hell you didn't railroad them. And, you know, but we looked after everybody. Every recruit had a senior, and he had to sort of blanket his running shoes for him, press his trousers, shine his buttons, and things like that. The only thing we didn't do was we didn't polish his boots.
Right.
That's the only thing we didn't do. Well, I suppose they're odd today.
And they talk about cold showers.
Oh, we had a cold, not a shower, we had a cold bath every morning.
A bath?
A bath every morning. We would get up in the morning first thing, and you'd run down to the ablution rooms for the company. The whole bloody company would get one bath full almost to the top, with the water running, draining out and running at the same time. So that it kept itself, you know, almost up to the top. And one after the other, we would jump in this cold water, and then soaking wet with a towel around your waist and your FS cap. Yeah, I had to wear a cap, because that's where you carried the matches in the cap. Somebody asked for a match, you had the matches in your cap. So you kept the matches dry in your cap. You wore your FS cap, towel around your waist, and soaking wet, you ran down the hall to whoever was the duty senior for the morning, and he usually stayed in bed, and you walked past his bed, and he could see that you were soaking wet and freezing to death. Now, that was all right in the wintertime. In the summertime, we went into the lake off the boathouse.
Right.
It was a little bathing house. And we just ran down there, dropped our towels, jumped in, cold as charity, out, wrapped the towel around your waist, rushed back into the dormitory or across the square to the thing, and reported wet.
Well, of course you had to go all the way across to what's now Fort LaSalle.
That's right. Soaking wet.
Oh, my Lord.
But you know, there's a little label inside the FS cap. I guess the maker's name.
Yes.
So you undid the stitches about in the middle of it, and you stuck the matches in there, and then you could wear your hat and the matches would be inside. So you always had matches with you, because you always had to have a match for a senior if he asked for one. You know, I don't know why the place didn't rot and fall down. We get the fire hoses going. And we were down to 3 companies when we were in the frigate in our final year, A, B, and C companies. And the companies used to get after one another with the fire hoses at night. You know, anybody coming in the door would get a fire hose, practically knock you off your feet. And we had a great time with that.
The damage there must have been extensive damage caused by
Well, I'm sure it was. But it all ran down into A Company at the bottom and then out the door onto the square. Yeah, there was a company over there.
Oh, there was, okay.
We had 4 companies when I arrived. 3 of them were in the LaSalle building, and 1 was in the frigate. And the windows, of course, had to be open in every room. 50% open every night, winter and summer, rain or shine. And I was in a corner room in the frigate, the corner one that looked at the, straight across at the old hospital, that corner
Yes.
and the center one. So I had 2 windows because I was in the corner. So both of them were open halfway. I used to wake up in the morning in the wintertime and shake my snow off my blankets so I get out of bed. I don't know whether we had, I think we had the windows open in the second year too, I can't remember. But they certainly were open the first year. No, they must have been, because it was the second year that I was in the frigate. We were all in the frigate, and our windows were open halfway.
Were they?
Sure, because I had snow on my bed every night in the frigate, in the wintertime. Well, not every night, but whenever it snowed.
Now, another thing that they still...
Yeah, we had to pass off the square in front of the drill sergeant major.
Ah,
He would stand there and you would have to show him as you could march. We had swagger sticks in those days. And you'd march with your swagger stick, keeping it horizontal to the ground. And you'd salute with a swagger stick. It took about 13 paces to do a salute. So if you weren't quick enough, you'd be 13 paces past them. But no, you saw somebody coming and you know, up, 2, 3, down, 2, 3, salute, 2, 3, whatever.
Yeah.
And we did all that with our swagger sticks. And then you had to pass off the square to make sure that you could do it and do it properly.
and that was, you couldn't go ashore until you'd done that.
That's right. Couldn't go ashore anyway, but
Oh,
well, you know, if you could. I think after Christmas. I don't know when it started. We were allowed to put in a pass till 11 o'clock at night. You had to get it signed by the company commander.
right.
And you always had to sign out to somebody. So we always signed out to Mrs. The hell was her name? We all used the same name. I don't know where the hell it came from. And I can't remember what it was. But we all signed out to Mrs. So-and-so. Had to be a Mrs.
You're
So
right.
we all signed out to this Mrs. So-and-so. I don't know who the hell she was.
Because you were the last class,
Yeah.
and you were leaving an empty college. So what went on for
On the
that?
graduation day?
Yeah.
Well, we started off with a ceremonial parade in the normal way. You know, marching, doing this thing I was on the square that one always does. And the Governor General was always there. In our day, it was Lord Athlone. And he and his Countess of Athlone would come down, stay at the Commandant's house. And they start off in the morning with a parade on the square, the normal, proper parade. And then we quickly changed into PT kit, and we came out and we put on a display of club swinging and saber swinging. The sabers stood on boxes about so high, so that when you swung them, they wouldn't crack, you know, hit the ground. You were up high enough, so they would swing. We did all sorts of exercises with clubs and sabers. And then there would be a PT display. We had a high bar where people do giant swings on it. And a horse would come out, and we all leapt over the horse and did all sorts of things. And I was the last one in my company to go over, and I had to turn and do the scissors backwards. You know, you jump over a horse, a high ball,
Yep.
normally like that. But I was the last one over, and I had to turn and go over backwards.
Oh.
Which, if you caught yourself on the box, you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I made it. And that sort of thing, that went on. So there was the high box after that. And then we did a couple of tabloids. The whole class would form up, you know, in a tabloid type of thing.
Yes.
People were lifted up and some were down, and you know, the usual tabloid on the square. They would go off for lunch, and then in our case we fell in again on the square after lunch, and we took the colours down to the cathedral where we laid them up, and they're still there today. I was in the colour party, which was interesting. And we laid the colours up, and then we went back to the college and got ready for the June ball. And all the parents were there, and had a June ball to finish off with. I'm sorry, you're quite right. When we came back from laying up the colours, and we marched back onto the square, the commandant, who had marched us down to the cathedral, let the director of cadets, he was called the chief instructor in those days, the lieutenant colonel, he marched us back. And when we got back on the square, the commandant stood on the square, but off the saluting base. So when we formed up in front of the saluting base, there was nobody on it. So the BSM gave general salute or royal salute, or general salute, I guess, to the college, to our college, you know, present arms. And we saluted the college because there was nobody there. Then we were dismissed by the BSM, and we marched off the square into the frigate, and there was nobody left on the square.
Hmm. Now, I just remembered, you didn't wear the standard cadet uniforms?
No, we wore khaki. Now, the cadet uniform, the daily dress for a cadet was a blue battle dress. We wore a khaki battle dress, the one that was issued to the troops. So all we had to do was to change the Royal Military College insignia on the shoulder and put on your regimental one, because it was a standard Army issue battle dress.
Right.
But the headdress was the FS cap. When you went downtown, you walked out and went downtown, or paraded downtown to church, or whenever you left the college, you wore a service dress. We had a khaki service dress, just the way I guess they do today, but it's green. But in those days it was still khaki. And we wore a khaki service dress. And again, all we had to do was to take the Royal Military College flash off the shoulder and put up your pips. But with that, we wore a pillbox.
Oh!
So we wore today, every day, daily work around the college and going to classes was a battle dress with a blue FS cap. Going outside the gates, you always went outside in service dress and a pillbox.
I see, okay.
Except sometimes in the summer, when it was very hot, we had a recreation dress. And it was white flannel trousers and a scarlet jacket, a blazer like this, but it was scarlet with the RMC badge on it.
So you didn't have...
And a pillbox. So in a very hot time in the summer, if you're going out in the evening, you wore white flannels, a red blazer, and a pillbox.
What an odd dress.
Yeah, but nobody said a word. And you know, nobody ever criticized you or made fun of you in downtown Kingston. Some of the youngsters used to sing a little song as cadets, cadets, the teacher's pets, always smoking cigarettes. And that used to, we just ignored it.
Yeah.
It's all right. And, but that's the way we went downtown. And nobody ever turned and looked sideways at you. They just expected to see you. And of course, you had to mark, you couldn't carry a parcel, you couldn't have a girl on your arm. You had to mark with your swagger stick up Princess Street. And when you got to a stop sign or something, or there's a car coming, you would mark time, swagger stick up and down, mark time, and our knees were right up.
Traffic light.
That's right, and nobody would look or even ignore, just, you know, it was so normal. But we'd mark time with a traffic sign or wait for a car to go by, and then you cross the road. And when you went into a shop, when you came out, you couldn't turn left. You had to turn right. So if you'd forgotten something that was in this shop to the left, you had to turn right and go all the way around the block, so you were always turning right.
Did anybody ever explain why one would do that?
No, nobody ever asked.
So you didn't have scarlet tunics,
No, we had khaki.
and you didn't have the patrol blues.
No.
Okay.
We had the khaki battle dress,
Yep.
the khaki, you know, tunic and trousers. We didn't have a Sam Brown belt, we had a cloth belt. which most people did during the war. And we had a khaki greatcoat and a khaki, what's that, a khaki raincoat, I guess.
Yeah. Everything, yeah.
So that when we left, all you had to do was to change the title on the shoulder.
Right.
You mean the American ones we got?
Yeah.
Yeah, after Dunkirk, they took away all our Lee Enfield rifles and shipped them over to England. You know, the British Army came back from Dunkirk with nothing. They left everything behind. The good units came back with their rifles, but many left them behind. So they were so short of rifles in England for the army there that they took away our Lee Enfields, boxed them up and shipped them over to England. And they bought from the Americans, the American Winchester rifles. And they'd been put away in grease and muck at the end of World War I.
Mm-hmm.
You never saw anything so filthy in your life as when we were just handed the box with 4 rifles in it, I think, and took them out, and they were caked in grease and oil and muck, left over there, been there since 1918, I guess. And they were in a terrible state. And it took us days and days of 24 hours a day almost trying to clean these bloody things. But we eventually got them cleaned and got to the point we could get on the square with them. But the Lee Enfield rifle, not the Lee Enfield, the Winchester American rifles, you know, you put your block of ammunition in it, and when you get to the last one with a Lee Enfield, the bolt shuts, nothing happens. But with a Winchester, the casing that it's in came up a bit, and the bolt wouldn't shut. So they knew that it hadn't any more ammunition, it was empty, had to put another clip in. So here we were on parade, and when you get E springs, you couldn't close it if you pulled your bolt back because it came up. So we had to figure that out, and somebody, I think probably Timmy O'Reilly or somebody, got a wooden thing, sort of a U-shaped, about that long, which you put into the breech, pushed it down, which acted as though you had some ammunition in it, and you could then shut the bolt. By the time you had mucked around and presented arms and shouldered arms and all these things, that block of wood would get shifted or moved a bit, and then you couldn't shut your bolt. So half the time you were on a ceremonial parade on the square, you couldn't shut the goddamn bolt. So it was a hell of a mess. So we had a terrible time with these Winchesters. Yeah, we all had a fire picket post. Everybody knew what it was. And every now and again they'd have a fire alarm. Either the day or at night. Usually they had them in the middle of the bloody night, as they always do. And we all had a post to go to, and we went there, we waited. We'd run over in bedroom slippers and pajamas, freeze to death in the wintertime. And the duty officer and the CSM on duty, wherever he was, would come along and check off all the fire pickets, and you'd be dismissed. Well, I was on the 3rd floor or whatever it was, of the Mackenzie building, underneath the tower, and they had a room there, barred, with all the Leinster plate in it. Quite secure and barred and everything. And of course, I was the last one they ever came to, because I was the furthest away from it. So I used to stand there freezing to death. But I took the opportunity to read what was on the silver. So I learned all about the Leinster plate. And when I heard the duty officer come in the door downstairs, I would turn around and stand at attention, be all set for him. So I had an idea what the Leinster plate was all about. When I went there as commandant, it was rather interesting. I went there as commandant, and I was doing the inspection of the buildings, one at a time, as one usually does. And when I was inspecting the Mackenzie building, I got up there, and there was no Leinster plate, no armed room at the top. With light, with windows and lights in it. So I said, "Where's the Leinster plate?" And they said, "What the hell are you talking about?" So I thought, that's rather strange. Anyway, a couple of days later, I was inspecting the mess. And there's a room in the basement, which was locked, of course. So I said, well, open it. What's in there? Well, we're not quite sure. Well, open it. Let's find out. Well, it took about 10 minutes for somebody to find a key, and they got a key, and we opened this room and went in, and it was full of broken mess furniture. Tables, chairs, you name it. It was all there, piled. Lamps, everything. All broken and just left in this room in the basement. You couldn't, there was only one little light in it, you could hardly see. So I said, get a flashlight and let's see what's over there in the corner. So somebody found a flashlight, and we went over, and there were a whole pile of wooden boxes in the corner. I said, what's in there? Nobody had a clue. I said, get an axe or a hammer or something and get it open, let's find out. So we opened it up, and it was all a Leinster plate. Beautiful stuff, but it was all covered in yellow grease and muck. You know, it all turned black, been there for years. Yeah. Ever since, I think it's probably the end of World War II. And we're now in the 70s. Anyway, we opened it up, and we had a cleaning expedition going on for weeks to get it cleaned up and build a few cabinets for it. Right. Put it out in the mess. That was the Leinster plate.
To do with, I guess, the
There was a museum in the Martello Tower in the fort. Not a very good one, but it was there.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Because I can remember there was that famous collection of small arms.
Douglas collection.
The Douglas collection, right. And the Douglas collection was all in there. Pistols and rifles and stuff like that. That's the only thing I can remember that was in there. But there were other bits and pieces, but the Douglas collection was the main thing.
It's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, there was an old boy who used to look after it. A fellow called, a Scotch name, MacDonald. I think his name was MacDonald. He used to play the pipes. And every night you could hear him playing the pipes out of the Martello Tower in the fort. And he looked after the museum. Ah. Okay. We also had a mounted policeman at RMC in those days too. Did you know that?
No.
Well, we didn't have commissionaires, I don't think. I don't know when they started. So we had a mounted policeman. On high days and holidays, he'd be in his scarlet tunic. He kept very much to himself and very off. He didn't push himself forward. He never appeared around on parade days and things like that, except in the background. But there was a mounted policeman there. And in those days, the cadets had to pull the flag down, lower the flag at night on the Mackenzie building. And the mounted policeman used to bring the flag down in the fort, you know, the big flagpole in the fort. Yes. So he would tramp out there at night, at sundown, to pull the flag down. And there was a cadet flag detailed, different one every day. We'd go up the tower in the Mackenzie building. In those days, it was a very rickety old tower with rickety old step ladders going up into the tower. And there were gaps in the slats in the roof. God, the wind used to howl through there at night, scare me to death. And how the hell we managed to stay on the step ladders, I don't know. But we climb up into the top of the Mackenzie building, raise the hatch on the top, stick your head out, get it blown off, because the wind was howling up there in the wintertime. And you get the halyards undone and hung on to them for dear life, because if you lost them, they'd blow out and you'd be flag officer flag cadet for years to come. So you hang on to this bloody thing, and then you looked at the flag in the fort and watched the mounted policeman. And he'd lower the flag there. His flag was 100 and something feet. We had a short one on the thing. But you had to time it so that you got your flag down on the Mackenzie building. At the same time, he got his down in the fort, so they both ended up at the bottom together. And then you'd get it in and tie the halyards up on the flagpole again, and then close the lid. By that time, it was dark, and you couldn't see in the bloody tower. And my God, it was scary. It used to scare me to death.
Now, which flag flew where? One of the things as we go through the old files is the famous punishment sheets. And what sort of punishments were they? Because they don't, all we get is the letters or little notations, you know, 5 days of something.
Defaulters drill was the common one. And you would have to, some senior would take an objection to what you were doing or weren't doing. And they said, all right, 3 DDs or 5 DDs or 2 weeks, whatever it was. Some people were on for months. They'd pile up, you know, with 2s and 3s or 5s, and they'd add up, and you'd find yourself that you were on defaulters drill every bloody afternoon, right up through till Christmas. And when we got leave at Christmas, they were all canceled. So you came back in January and you started from scratch again.
Amnesty.
And that's the only way you got them canceled. But most people, they just went on and on and on.
Now, if you played football,
If you played football, I don't know how they got around that, but they did, because the football players used to be exempt. I guess they gave them something else. Or the hockey team. I don't know. Anyway, defaulters drill was the big one. And it was half an hour parade on the square every afternoon. I guess you then went off and went down and joined your team after that.
okay. Now, there were also punishments noted that were given by professors for inattention in class and such things. Was there any other form of punishment other than?
I don't remember any professors doing
Okay.
anything.
Okay,
If they had anything, it was a straight, simple charge.
right. Were there any serious charges ever brought against cadets, or?
Well, I don't know what you would call senior serious. We had 2 cadets. One night took the policeman in Kingston used to have motorbikes in those days. And these 2 cadets were walking up Princess Street one day, and some policeman had parked his motorbike up by the theater somewhere. So they said, oh boy, motorbike, let's get on it and go. So one got on and drove it, and the other one was on the pillion behind. And they roared up and down Princess Street on this policeman's motorbike. You know, you're going to take a motorbike, you don't want to take a policeman's. So they got defaulters drills from then until the college ended. Then there were the 2 cadets who took a dinghy one night, or late one afternoon, went sailing out here, and the boat turned over, and they couldn't right it, so they hung onto the bottom of this dinghy. The sail was down somewhere, and they hung onto the bottom of this dinghy all night long, 2 of them. And when dawn finally broke, one of them said, you know, enough's enough, I'm going to swim ashore. And they thought they were really reasonably close to Wolf Island. They're about a mile off the shore of Wolf Island. So this fellow let go of the boat and swam to Wolf Island and ended up in somebody's garden, you know, that went down to the water over here. Went up and the woman saw him just in his underwear. And he told her what had happened, and they called the police. Came and got the other fellow who was still hanging on the boat. Well, they weren't thrown out because it was towards the end of the year, but they were on defaulters drill until the college closed.
My Lord.
And in fact, the fellow that did the swimming to Wolf Island got a medal later on. He was up in Petawawa with the Armored Corps, I think. Had a big parade up there and presented him with some life-saving medal.
Oh, yes,
Oh, what flag was which?
yes.
I think we flew the RMC flag on the tower at the Mackenzie Building,
Yeah,
and a great big one at the point. No, just a minute. No, Union Jack at the point.
yeah.
That was it. The
That's the
Union
way
Jack.
it was described when Archie MacDonald put the flagpole up in 1923 or something.
That's right. And it had a great big Union Jack on it the whole time we
Yes.
were there. And the Mackenzie Building had the RMC flag on it.
Yes,
And then when I was there, they didn't have a flagpole in the fort.
Thank you.
So I decided we better get a flagpole. So I found out that the old flagpole was it 108 feet, 108 feet tall, 128 feet,
Right.
something, whatever it was. And I said, I want another flagpole the same height. But I didn't know where the hell to get one, so I phoned one of my seniors, was McLaren Lumber, up the Ottawa River. So I got him on the phone and said, can you find me a pole 108 feet tall? And he said, no, but I can find you 2 that will add up to that. So he did, and he sent them down, and we put them up on the thing, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
108 feet, exactly as we had before. I don't think it was 108, 120. I don't know what it was, but anyway. So we put it up, and then somebody came along, some smart guy came along and said, "What flag are you going to fly on it?" And I said, "Well, it always had the Union Jack on it." He said, "Well, you can't fly that now. You can't fly the Union Jack now, it wouldn't be right." So the registrar brought me down 2 files, each about that thick. All about the flag, thank you very much, all about what flag should be flown at the point. And I thought, I took a quick skim through that. There was the Canadian flag, there was the red ensign, there was the Union Jack, there was the fleur-de-lis, Royal Flag of France, and all these things. And I said, for God's sake, we're not going to get into that. We'll fly a flag, we'll fly the RMC flag. Nobody can argue with that. So up went the RMC flag.
Ah,
Otherwise, I'm not quite sure what we'd be flying there now. And then we got a great big one for high days and holidays.
right.
A huge one. I don't know whether they still have it. But now the flags go up and they stay up 24 hours a day, I think.
Yes.
Because you don't have a mounted policeman to pull them down.
Oh, for goodness sakes. Commissionaires used to do that when
They
I was
used to,
here as
yeah.
commandant.
Yeah, well, they don't anymore because it's cheaper to leave them up and let them go bits and pieces and then choose.
Oh, my Lord.
So they leave them up all night. But anyway, so we when they brought these 2 files and said, "What flag are you going to fly?" I said, "We'll fly the Canadian flag." Sorry, the RMC flag. So we did.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was a good choice. Nobody ever questioned it anyway.
Oh, there's a naval mast at the square.
On the square, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, that was there in my day. I think it was put in by Willie Hay, or no, Piers, I think. He put up the naval jacks.
Debbie.
Debbie Piers. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think
And
now.
I was going to change it. And I thought, oh, what the hell? He put it up, let's leave it. I'm not going to get into an argument. Oh, and I think that pole that McLaren sent me down, which he gave to the college, and I put a plaque on it with his name presented by Fergus McLaren. And I took a picture of it and sent it back to him and thanked him very much. But I think it packed up. Went up in about 73 when I first got there as commandant. And it lasted, I don't know, maybe 20 years or so. It started to rot. So they were afraid it might fall down, so they got another one. Now, I don't know where the new one came from. But those
Oh, I know.
flagpoles cost the earth. Gave it to us,
Okay,
which was very kind of him. So I put his name on
right.
a brass plate on the bottom, presented by Fergus McLaren to the college.
Okay,
He was a senior of mine.
right. We'll have to remember that when we make
But,
it.
we had waiters in the mess in my day.
Yes.
I'm sticky.
Now that's when you had the 2 dining rooms over in the Mackenzie building?
No, just one.
Just one?
Yep.
Okay.
Dollar bills, where you could go over and buy a bottle of booze
I
across the way
know.
over there.
Tell us something about dollar bills.
Well, all I know is that this fellow had a shack over the far side of the playing fields
Yeah.
on the water there, on the inlet. And he had a shack right on the water somewhere there. And you could go over there and buy homemade booze by the bottle. Church parades. Every Sunday, we marched into church to 3 churches, the RC one, the Church of England Cathedral down here, and the United one.
Sydenham.
Sydenham United.
Every Sunday.
Except, yeah, every Sunday, every single Sunday, yeah. Rain or shine, we used to, in the wintertime, we used to walk across the ice, break step, put down the flaps of the
Yeah.
the Astrakhan winter hat. When we got to this side, or going back, you'd stop, up would go the flaps, and your ears would freeze off, and you'd walk up Princess Street to the cathedral. That was fine. Except one of our people, being rather clever, said he was a Christian Scientist. And he was sent off separately with a swagger stick, which he had cut short, which fitted up his sleeve, pulled it out, and he'd take off, as he said, to the Christian Science Church. In fact, he went to the Scruff Shack, the Superior, had a milkshake and went home again. Very clever. We were all very envious of him. We ate square meals in the dining room and sat on 2 inches of a chair.
2 inches.
2 inches, the first 2 inches were all you were allowed to sit on. Let's see,
That's
what we got.
interesting.
Ice in the winter. Some people used to skate across to Wolf Island when it froze over to go and get a drink or two in the evening or at night. And there was a great pressure crack off RMC. And coming back, you had to have your wits about you to leap over this pressure crack or you'd go through.
Oh boy.
So that was rather fun. Full attendance at all sporting events. If you weren't playing a sport, you went and watched the football game or whatever it was, and took part in the cheering. I've talked about relaxing in the fort. Dances in Curry Hall. The balls were always held in the gym, what we call the new gym. It's the one above the dining room.
Yes.
And we had a Christmas ball there and a June ball. And sometimes we had a dance in Curry Hall about Thanksgiving and another one in the spring before the June ball.
Or is
Well,
it,
the people, the first ones, the people that lived in Kingston would get a girl for somebody. But after you'd been here for a while, you'd eventually get to know your way around Queens and what have you, and we'd find one that way. There were some great tales about Banry Hall. Of course, they had an old dragon who sat in the doorway, and you couldn't go in to Banry Hall with the girl. We took her home. You said goodnight at the door, and she went in, and the dragon stopped you from going in. So that was all right. Some people were clever enough to go around the back and up the fire escape. But
Yep.
a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, had 2 girls at the June ball, which caused quite a commotion.
2 girls.
Yeah, his parents brought a girl down for him, who he eventually married. But he had already invited one from Kingston.
oh dear.
So he told them both that he was on duty that night. So he had danced with one for a while, and well, the other one thought he was on duty somewhere, and then switched around.
Oh.
I don't know how he managed it. Nobody else could. We all admired it. Parades, we had 3 meal parades a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner. We paraded for every meal. And then we had a parade at night at 10 o'clock, I think it was, the roll call parade, before you went to, then the lights out. You know the old gym, the one down by the frigate?
Yes.
Well, the basement there was
Yes.
a firing range.
Yep.
And we used to fire 22 rifles and pistols down there,
Right.
a lot.
Oh.
And then you got a spoon for it. I got a lot of spoons around here somewhere. With a crest on, no, I don't see any today.
No.
None of them, yeah.
Summer dances, oh, the yacht club here, the one down here, just next door to us. They, in our final year, they gave us a free membership, so we were able to go to the Saturday night dances if we were so inclined.
Oh.
But you know, you had to be home and locked up by 1 o'clock, so. We didn't, a year ahead of us. I don't know whether you ever heard of Sam Potts. Well, he got a group together one night, and they got a skeleton, a full skeleton of a horse. I don't know how they kept it together, must have wired it or something. And they took this up into the tower of the Mackenzie building, out through the hatch somehow, and then pulled it up the top of the flagpole. And in the morning, when everybody came down, there was a skeleton of a full horse at the top of the flagpole in the Mackenzie building. But poor old Sam, in doing this, slipped and fell down the stairs inside the tower and broke a leg, so he was on crutches for the next few months.
Oh dear.
We,
But that wasn't our class, that was
unfortunately, this is all that's left. They're lovely spoons, and there was 6 of everything. But when we were at the Commandant's house, I don't know what people did, but they used to think that they were government property. We had a lot of stuff stolen out of the house,
Oh really?
which was our silver.
They're really quite nice.
They were the coffee ones, and then the other ones.
I got those for either pistol or rifle, or both, I guess. Anyway, a class ahead of us fired a cannon at the Wolf Island Ferry one day. but they didn't quite get the powder right, and the thing was a hang fire. And the Wolf-Island ferry got closer and closer, because they'd aimed it across the bow. And it finally went off, and it just skimmed the decks and landed them.
So they had a cannonball in this thing.
Oh, sure. So all the cannons around there had cannonballs at one point, but they were, you know.
Burchell used to tell
This
that
one's his
story.
highest
Yeah, because it was
pistol.
before our year.
Yeah,
So,
right,
it
yeah.
was,
So it must have been Birch, because
but they fired this
Yeah.
damn thing off, and it
42.
nearly sank the
It's
Wolf-Island
such a
ferry.
shame, actually.
Well, it's
But
beautiful.
People
every
take
cannon
things.
around RMC
They
had a
think
pile of
that-
cannonballs
They think they're government.
beside it.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
you
It's
know
just
the
sick,
cadets
isn't
that
it?
come in the summer,
Well, it makes you wonder.
sea cadets and people like that, you use the thing as a
yeah.
summer training. They stole all the cannonballs and bowled them down the sidewalks and the streets into the lake. So the lake at the end of every road is full of cannonballs now. Of course, in our day, we were there. We were all aimed at going off to war, as you know. The
Yes.
war was on, so all we wanted to do was to get out and get going, and which most of us did. We talked about the lake, military training during the summer. We talked about that. Military training at RMC. I think if you look at the course, what do you call it? The reports on the cadets, which are on file there, you'll count about 20 military subjects and about 20. All the professors, of course, wore uniforms during the war,
Yeah.
or most of them. Most of them shouldn't have been allowed out in anything, but they turned up in uniforms looking like nothing on earth. In the building that's up near the corner of the stone frigate, there was a medical officer in there. He had it was the hospital. They had a ward in the basement where if any cadet was sick, they went into a bed.
Is this Panning House?
No,
Or-
not Panning
Oh,
House,
the
other
old
one.
hospital.
The old hospital.
Right.
And they were down in there. And they had a nursing sister. She lived in the suite up above. And there was a doctor stationed here. Meals. There were servants in the dining room who brought the meals out to the tables. Sat at tables for 12, and they brought the meals out and plunked them down, usually for 6 at this end and 6 at that end of every table. And then you passed them around and had to make sure that you took your share, but no more. The hardest thing to do was to cut a pie, because the pie had to be cut in 6 pieces. That's no problem. But when somebody was away and you had to cut it in 5, it wasn't all that easy. And similarly, they used to bring a block, on Sundays, there's a block of ice cream on every table for 12 people, about that long and about that wide. And some poor recruit was always told, cut the ice cream. They had to cut it in 12 pieces. Doesn't sound very difficult. But somebody would always be away and you had to cut it in 11. And you got the last piece. So that was always fun. There were 2 barbers down there every Wednesday, and you waited almost all day Wednesday to get your bloody hair cut, because you just get up to the front of the line and some senior would walk in. And of course he went first. So that used to take some time. We talked about the canteen, $5 a month, pay parade. You go up and salute the paymaster, get your $5 every month. Oh, Queens, the bridge. Every year the Queen students used to come over and lie in wait on the causeway in amongst the girders. And if there was some cadet coming home by himself, they would jump him and toss him in the water.
Ah,
Okay, but it didn't take us long to figure that out. So we used to meet at the Scruff Shack, the Superior Cafe, whatever it's called. And we used to wait there till we got about 4 of us. And then we'd come back across the bridge. And we'd never walk on the side where the girders were. We'd walk right across the middle of the center of the bridge. And when the Queen's people came out, we'd take the waist belts off, you know, the leather belt with a buckle on them, take them off. They were very effective. And, you know, about once or twice, and that ended all that for the year. Yeah, most of the girls came from Banbury Hall, which is still there today, I think.
Yes, it is.
Of course, we had to walk everywhere. We weren't allowed cars. We weren't allowed to take a taxi. We weren't allowed to get on a bus. We weren't allowed to carry packages. So if you bought anything downtown, it had to fit in your pocket, because you couldn't carry anything. Sunday teas at the Commandant's house. And Sunday at lunchtime, there was always an announcement that the Commandant or Mrs. Commandant would be at home for 6 cadets this afternoon for tea. So 6 cadets had better be at the BSM's door, you know,